I thought my wife's late nights were about work deadlines. I was wrong. When my 17-year-old daughter called me crying, saying she had something terrible to tell me about Mom, I realized my 20-year marriage was built on lies. But what I discovered next made the affair look like child's play. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was planning something that would destroy our family forever. Time to show her what happens when you corner a quiet man. My name is Brian Mitchell. I'm 46 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. 3 successful coffee shops in downtown Portland, a beautiful wife who worked in marketing, and 2 kids who were my whole world. Madison, 17, straight, a student with dreams of Stanford. Lucas, 12, the kind of kid who still believed his old man hung the moon. The irony wasn't lost on me that I built my business on bringing people together over coffee, creating those warm moments where folks could connect and feel at home. Meanwhile, my own home was turning into a stage for the performance of my life, and I didn't even know I was the only one who thought it was real. Catherine always said I was too trusting, too soft for business. Maybe she was right about the trusting part. When your wife comes home talking about late meetings with Ryan from the creative department, you don't immediately think she's planning to destroy everything you built together. You think she's dedicated to her career. When she starts working weekends on special projects, you're proud of her ambition. I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was opening the main shop on Morrison Street. The espresso machine was giving me trouble, and I was down on my knees trying to fix it when Madison called. Her voice was different, strained. "Dad," Madison said, and I could hear tears behind the words. "I need to tell you something about Mom." That's when I learned that my cheating wife's nightmare was only going to be the beginning of my quiet revenge. Not revenge born of anger, but of necessity. Sometimes a man has to protect what matters most, even when it means dismantling the lie his life had become. I didn't know it then, but Lucas had been recording conversations for weeks. Not because I asked him to, but because Catherine had been using our 12-year-old son as her personal spy. The kid was torn between loyalty to his mother and the growing realization that something was terribly wrong in our house. What I discovered over the next few days would change everything. Catherine wasn't just having an affair. She was methodically planning to take my kids, my business, and my reputation. She had enlisted help from people I never would have suspected, including her own mother, Eleanor, who had been funding this operation from the beginning. But here's what Catherine didn't count on: underestimating a quiet man who spent 20 years building something real, something worth fighting for. She thought I'd crumble like sugar in the rain. Instead, she was about to find out that sometimes the gentlest souls become the most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose except the people they love. The phone call with Madison lasted 43 minutes. I know because I was staring at the timer the whole time, watching my world fall apart in real time. She told me about the conversation she'd overheard, the late-night phone calls, the way Mom had been asking Lucas to keep track of what Dad was doing. "Madison," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "where's your brother right now?" "He's at soccer practice," Madison replied. "Dad, there's something else. Lucas has been really upset lately. Mom told him that you might try to take us away from her, that he needed to help protect the family." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Catherine was using our 12-year-old son as her personal intelligence gatherer, and the kid thought he was protecting his family. Meanwhile, she was the one tearing it apart. I closed the coffee shop early that day, something I'd never done in 12 years of business. Drove straight to Lucas's school and waited in the parking lot until practice ended. When he came jogging over to my truck, his face lit up the way it always did when he saw me. That smile nearly broke my heart, knowing what I was about to ask him. "Hey, buddy," I said as he climbed into the passenger seat. "How was practice?" "Good," Lucas said, but his voice sounded tired. "Coach says I'm getting better at defense." I took a deep breath. "Lucas, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to tell me the truth, okay?" His face went pale. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, son, you didn't do anything wrong," I assured him. "But I need to know if Mom has been asking you to tell her things about what I do or say when she's not around." Lucas looked out the window for a long moment. When he turned back to me, his eyes were filled with tears. "She said you were sick," Lucas whispered. "She said you might try to hurt the family, and that I needed to help her keep everyone safe. She gave me this." He pulled out a small recording device from his backpack, the kind you buy at any electronics store. She told me to record you when you get angry. Lucas continued, his voice breaking. But Dad, you never get angry. Not really angry. So I've just been making stuff up in my reports to her. I stare at that little device in my son's hand, and something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated attack on my character, using my own children as weapons. Lucas, I said quietly, from now on, you don't have to do that anymore. And son, you're not protecting the family by lying. You're protecting it by telling the truth. That night, I made my first real decision in this war I hadn't known I was fighting. I was going to document everything. 3 days after Lucas showed me the recording device, I got an unexpected visitor at the Morrison Street shop. Eleanor, Catherine's mother, walked through the door at exactly 2 in the afternoon, dressed like she was heading to a board meeting instead of a coffee shop. Brian, Eleanor said, her voice carrying that tone she perfected over the years. We need to talk. I looked up from the espresso machine I was cleaning. Eleanor, what brings you here? You know exactly why I'm here, she replied, settling into one of the corner booths. Catherine told me about your recent behavior. The accusations, the paranoia. It's concerning. I felt my blood pressure rise, but I kept my voice level. My recent behavior, Brian, Eleanor said, leaning forward. Catherine is worried about you. We all are. This obsession with her work schedule, questioning the children about their mother. It's not healthy. The audacity was breathtaking. Here was the woman who'd never thought I was good enough for her daughter, now sitting in my coffee shop, gaslighting me about my own marriage. Eleanor, I said, walking over to her table. Let me ask you something. How much money have you given Catherine in the past 6 months? Her face went rigid. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, I replied. I'm asking a direct question. How much money have you given my wife? Eleanor stood up, smoothing her skirt. I think this conversation is over. No, I said, blocking her path to the door. This conversation is just getting started. See, I did some checking. Turns out there's been quite a bit of money moving around lately. Legal fees, private investigator fees, deposits for a new apartment downtown. Eleanor's face went pale. You have no idea what you're talking about. $28,000. I continued. That's what you've given Catherine since January. I wonder what a family court judge would think about that kind of financial backing for a custody battle. How dare you? How dare I what? I interrupted. How dare I protect my children? How dare I ask questions when my son comes home with recording equipment? How dare I notice when my wife starts working 16-hour days, but her pay stubs don't show any overtime? Eleanor took a step back. Catherine was right about you. You are becoming unstable. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Say that again, Eleanor. For the record. She stared at the phone, then at me. You're recording me? Just like your daughter has been recording me for months, I said. Except I'm being honest about it. Now, let me be very clear about something. If you think I'm going to stand by and let you and Catherine destroy my family to satisfy some twisted need for control, you're wrong. Eleanor headed for the door, but turned back one last time. You'll regret this, Brian. No, I replied. Catherine will. That evening, I did something I'd never done in 20 years of marriage. I went through Catherine's things. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to know how deep this went. In her dresser drawer, underneath a stack of business cards, I found a folder labeled legal documents. Inside were papers I'd never seen before. Consultation notes with 3 different divorce attorneys, a property appraisal for our house, and a financial assessment that listed all of our assets, including the coffee shops. But the most damning piece was a handwritten timeline in Catherine's own writing. It started 6 months ago and mapped out a strategy. Phase 1, document Brian's instability. Phase 2, secure legal representation. Phase 3, initiate custody proceedings. My hands were shaking as I photographed every page. This wasn't a woman having an affair and feeling guilty about it. This was a woman executing a plan to destroy her husband while making it look like she was the victim. The timeline mentioned Ryan, but not as a lover, as a support system and witness to Brian's behavior. It mentioned Eleanor's financial contributions and something called the trigger event scheduled for next month. I was still reading when I heard Catherine's car in the driveway. I quickly put everything back exactly as I'd found it and went downstairs to the kitchen. Hey, Catherine said as she walked in, kissing my cheek like nothing had changed. How was your day? Busy, I replied, watching her face carefully. Eleanor stopped by the shop. Catherine's expression didn't change, but I caught a slight hesitation. "Oh, what did she want?" "She seemed concerned about my mental health," I said. "Apparently, you've been telling her I'm unstable." Catherine set down her purse and turned to face me. "Brian, you've been acting strange lately. The kids have noticed it too." "Have they?" I asked, because when I talked to Lucas yesterday, he seemed more worried about the recording device you gave him than anything I've been doing. The color drained from Catherine's face. "Recording device? Brian, what are you talking about?" "The one you told him to use to record me when I get angry," I continued. "Except here's the thing, Catherine. I don't get angry. So our 12-year-old son has been making up stories to keep you happy." Catherine's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold behind her eyes. "Lucas has an active imagination. Does he?" I asked. Or does he have a mother who's been using him as a pawn in a game I didn't even know we were playing?" Catherine walked to the refrigerator and opened it, her back to me. "I think you need help, Brian. Professional help." "You know what I think?" I replied. "I think you've made the biggest mistake of your life." The law offices of Graves and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of a downtown Portland high-rise. I'd never heard of Charles Graves before I found his business card in Catherine's purse, but a quick internet search told me everything I needed to know. He specialized in high-conflict custody cases and had a reputation for destroying fathers in family court. I sat in my truck across the street, watching the building entrance through binoculars. Catherine had told me she was working late on a presentation, but her car was parked in the visitor garage beneath Graves' building. At exactly 6:30, I saw them. Catherine walked out with a man in an expensive suit who had to be Graves. They weren't acting like attorney and client. They were acting like old friends. Or maybe something more. I followed them at a distance to a restaurant called the Metropolitan, one of those places where dinner costs more than most people make in a day. Through the window, I watched Catherine hand Graves a manila envelope. He opened it, examined the contents, and nodded approvingly. Then something interesting happened. A third person joined them, a woman I didn't recognize at first. She was maybe 40, blonde, well-dressed. It took me a few minutes to place her, but then it hit me. Dr. Sarah Chun, the child psychologist who'd evaluated families in several high-profile custody cases I'd read about online. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Whatever they were planning, they were doing it in public, and they were confident enough to meet face-to-face. That overconfidence was about to become their downfall. Through the restaurant window, I watched Graves spread documents across the table. Catherine was pointing to specific sections, while Dr. Chun took notes. At one point, Graves pulled out what looked like a check and slid across to Dr. Chun. My blood went cold. They weren't just planning to use a child psychologist in their case against me. They were buying one. I recorded for 27 minutes, until they finished their meal and went their separate ways. Catherine headed toward her car, but instead of going home, she drove to a hotel downtown. The same hotel where Ryan worked as a marketing consultant for corporate events. As I sat in that parking lot, watching my wife walk into a hotel to meet her lover after planning my destruction with a corrupt lawyer and a bought psychologist, something fundamental changed inside me. The man who'd spent 20 years trying to make everyone happy, trying to keep the peace, trying to be understanding and forgiving, that man was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Catherine thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how dangerous a cornered father could become. I drove home that night with a plan forming in my mind. If Catherine wanted to wage war using my children as weapons, then it was time to show her what a real war looked like. 2 weeks later, Catherine came home to find everything changed. I'd spent those 14 days planning every detail, moving every piece into position, preparing for the moment when my cheating wife would finally understand that her nightmare was only the beginning of my quiet revenge. She pulled into the driveway at 6:47 p.m., 20 minutes later than she'd texted me she would be. I wasn't there to greet her. Neither were the kids. Neither was most of our furniture. I watched from my rental car, parked across the street as she walked up to the front door, her key turning in the lock. I could imagine her confusion as she stepped inside and found the house stripped nearly bare. No family photos on the walls. No comfortable furniture in the living room. Just the basics. One couch, one TV, one dining table. Through the window, I saw her standing in the hallway, slowly turning in a circle, trying to process what she was seeing. She pulled out her phone and dialed my number. "Brian," Catherine said when I answered. "Where are you? Where are the kids? What happened to the house?" "Hello, Catherine," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "The kids are safe. They're with me." "Where?" she demanded. "Brian, this isn't funny. Bring them home right now." "Actually," I said, "this is their home now. I've rented a house in Beaverton. 3 bedrooms, good schools, nice neighborhood. The kids like it." There was silence on the other end. Then, "You can't just take my children." "Our children," I corrected. "And actually I can. See, I filed for emergency custody." Turns out family court judges take a dim view of mothers who use their children to spy on their fathers. "You're lying," Catherine said, but her voice was shaking. "Am I?" I asked. "Why don't you check her email? My attorney sent you the paperwork about 3 hours ago." I could hear her frantically tapping on her phone. Then a sharp intake of breath. "This is insane," she said. "You can't prove any of these accusations." "Cannot," I replied. "Catherine, I know about Charles Graves. I know about Dr. Sarah Chun. I know about the money your mother has been giving you. And I know about the hotel receipts from your meetings with Ryan." The line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing. "But here's what I know that you don't know I know," I continued. "I know about the timeline you wrote out, planning my destruction. I know about the fake documents you've been preparing. And I know about the recording device you gave to our 12-year-old son." "Brian, I'm not finished," I said. "You see, Catherine, you made one critical error. You assumed I was weak because I was kind. You assumed I was stupid because I was trusting. You assumed I would just take whatever you dished out because that's what I'd always done before." Through the window, I could see her sitting down heavily on the remaining couch. "But you forgot something important," I continued. "A man who builds something from nothing, who works 16-hour days to provide for his family, who loves his children more than his own life. That man isn't weak. He's just been waiting for the right moment to show his strength." I hung up the phone and drove away, leaving Catherine alone in the house that had once been our home, finally understanding that the game she thought she was winning had just become a war she couldn't possibly survive. 3 days after Catherine came home to the empty house, Madison called me at 11 p.m., sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Dad," Madison said through her tears, "I can't take this anymore. Mom won't stop calling me. She's saying terrible things about you, and she's threatening to cut off my college fund if I don't come home." I was at the new house, helping Lucas with his math homework when the call came. "Madison, where are you right now?" "I'm at Sarah's house," she replied. "Mom called the school and told them I was skipping classes to live with you. She's trying to make it look like I'm falling apart because of what you did." My hands tightened on the phone. "What exactly did she tell the school?" "That you kidnapped me," Madison said, her voice breaking. "That you're having some kind of mental breakdown and you're using me and Lucas to hurt her. Dad, the guidance counselor wants to meet with me tomorrow about family intervention services." I felt rage building in my chest, but I kept my voice calm for my daughter's sake. "Madison, listen to me carefully. Your mother is lying. She's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things." "I know that," Madison said. "But Dad, she's not just lying to the school. She went to Stanford." My blood went cold. "What do you mean she went to Stanford?" "She called the admissions office," Madison explained. "She told them that our family is going through a crisis, that I might not be emotionally stable enough to handle college. She's trying to sabotage my admission." That was the moment Catherine crossed a line she could never uncross. Going after me was one thing, but attacking my daughter's future, trying to destroy the dreams Madison had worked 4 years to achieve, that was unforgivable. "Madison," I said, "pack your things. I'm coming to get you right now." "Dad, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to fix this," I replied. "And your mother is going to learn what happens when she messes with my children's futures." The drive to Sarah's house took 25 minutes. Madison was waiting on the front porch with her backpack and her laptop case. She looked exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. "Dad," she said as she got into the truck, "there's something else. Mom offered me $50,000 to testify against you in court." I nearly swerved off the road. "She what?" "She said Grandma Eleanor would put the money directly into my college account," Madison continued. "All I had to do was tell the judge that you've been acting erratic and that I'm afraid of you." I pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face my daughter. Madison, you know that's not true. Of course I know it's not true, she said, wiping her eyes. Dad, you've never even raised your voice at me. The only person I'm afraid of right now is Mom. As I drove home with Madison beside me, I realized that Catherine had just made her final mistake. She'd shown me exactly how far she was willing to go to win, which meant I now knew exactly how far I needed to go to stop her. The next morning, I walked into the offices of Patterson Associates, the law firm that had represented me in setting up my business years ago. But this time, I wasn't there to see my usual corporate attorney. I was there to see Sarah Patterson herself, the founding partner who specialized in high-stakes family law. Mr. Mitchell, Sarah said as I sat down across from her massive desk, I've reviewed the materials you sent over. This is quite a situation. It's about to get worse, I replied, placing a new folder on her desk. Last night, my wife attempted to bribe my 17-year-old daughter to testify against me in court. Sarah opened the folder and examined the bank statements I printed out. These show large transfers from Eleanor Richardson's account to your wife's account. $50,000, I said. That's what Catherine offered Madison to lie in court. The money came from Eleanor yesterday afternoon. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Mr. Mitchell, what your wife and her mother are doing isn't just unethical. It's criminal. Witness tampering, bribery, conspiracy. I know, I replied, which is why I'm here. I want to file a motion to have Catherine arrested for attempted bribery of a witness. That's the nuclear option, Sarah warned. Once we go down this path, there's no coming back. Your wife will face criminal charges. I thought about Madison's tears, about Lucas's confusion, about the recording device my 12-year-old son had been forced to carry. I thought about Catherine's timeline planning my destruction, about her meetings with corrupt lawyers and bot psychologists. Sarah, I said, my wife declared war on our family the moment she decided to use our children as weapons. She's tried to destroy my business, my reputation, and my relationship with my kids. Now she's attacking Madison's future and trying to bribe her to perjure herself in court. Sarah nodded slowly. And Charles Graves. Also going down, I replied. I have evidence of his relationship with Dr. Chun, the bribes, the whole conspiracy. Sarah stood up and walked to her window, overlooking downtown Portland. Mr. Mitchell, I've been practicing family law for 25 years. I've seen custody battles that would make your head spin. But what your wife is doing goes beyond anything I've encountered, which is why I need your help to stop it, I said. Sarah turned back to me. All right, we'll file the motion this afternoon. But I want you to understand something. When this hits the court system, it's going to be front-page news. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my coffee shops, about the customers who'd become friends over the years, about the community I'd built. Then I thought about my children, about protecting them from a mother who saw them as pawns in her twisted game. Sarah, I said, standing up, I'd rather have my name in the newspaper as a father who fought for his children than live quietly as a man who let them be destroyed. Then let's destroy some bad people, Sarah replied with a smile that could have cut glass. Starting with your wife. The courtroom was packed when Judge Anderson called the case to order. Word had gotten out about the corruption charges, and every family law attorney in Portland wanted to see how this would play out. Catherine sat at the defendant's table with a court-appointed attorney, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Charles Graves was notably absent, already facing federal charges. Your Honor, Sarah Patterson began, standing confidently at our table. The evidence will show that Catherine Mitchell engaged in a systematic campaign to destroy her husband's relationship with their children through fraud, manipulation, and attempted bribery. Judge Anderson, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the documents before her. Ms. Patterson, these are serious allegations. Witness tampering, child exploitation, conspiracy with corrupt legal counsel. Yes, Your Honor, Sarah replied. We have audio recordings, financial records, and testimony from both children. When Madison took the stand, her voice was clear and strong. My mother offered me $50,000 to lie about my father in court, she said, looking directly at Catherine. She told me that if I didn't testify against him, she would sabotage my college admission. Catherine's attorney objected, but Judge Anderson overruled him. I'll allow it. Continue, Miss Mitchell. My father has never been anything but supportive and loving, Madison continued. He worked every day to provide for our family, while my mother was planning to destroy him. The only person I've ever been afraid of in this situation is my mother. When Lucas testified, he was nervous but determined. Mom gave me a recording device, he said, his 12-year-old voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. She told me Dad was sick and that I needed to help protect the family by recording him when he got angry. But Dad never got angry, so I had to make stuff up. Judge Anderson's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. When Eleanor was called to testify about the financial support she'd provided, her arrogance crumbled under Sarah's cross-examination. Mrs. Richardson, Sarah said, "You provided your daughter with over $60,000 to fund this campaign against Mr. Mitchell, didn't you?" "I was helping my daughter through a difficult time," Eleanor replied stiffly. "By funding witness tampering and bribery." Sarah pressed. "Objection," Catherine's attorney called out. "Overruled," Judge Anderson said. "Answer the question, Mrs. Richardson." Eleanor's composure finally broke. "I didn't know it would go this far." When the evidence phase concluded, Judge Anderson didn't even recess to deliberate. "I've practiced law for 30 years, she said, "and I have never seen such a calculated assault on the parent-child relationship. Mrs. Mitchell, your actions constitute some of the most egregious examples of parental alienation and child exploitation I've encountered." Catherine finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Your Honor, I was trying to protect my children." "No, Mrs. Mitchell," Judge Anderson replied sharply. "You were trying to weaponize them. There's a difference." The judgment was swift and comprehensive. Full custody to me, supervised visitation only for Catherine, pending psychological evaluation, and criminal referrals for both Catherine and Eleanor. As we left the courthouse, Madison walked beside me with her head held high. "Dad," she said, "I'm proud of you for fighting back. I'm proud of you for telling the truth," I replied, even when it was hard. 6 months later, Lucas scored his first goal of the soccer season, and both Madison and I were there to cheer him on. The new house in Beaverton had become home in ways our old house never had. There were no secrets here, no hidden agendas, just a father and his children building something real together. Madison got her acceptance letter to Stanford in March. When she called to tell me, she was crying with joy. "Dad," she said, "they mentioned in the letter that they were impressed by how our family handled adversity with grace and integrity." "That's because we did," I told her, "and because you never let your mother's choices define who you are." The coffee shops were thriving. Funny how much easier it was to run a business when you weren't distracted by someone actively trying to sabotage your life. I'd hired 2 new managers and was actually taking weekends off for the first time in years. Catherine pleaded guilty to witness tampering and fraud charges. She received 2 years probation and mandatory counseling. The supervised visits with the kids happened sporadically. Lucas went occasionally, but Madison had chosen not to see her mother at all. I didn't pressure either of them. They'd make their own decisions about that relationship when they were ready. Eleanor faced her own legal consequences and had been forced to liquidate investments to pay restitution. The woman who'd looked down on me for 20 years was now asking for payment plans to cover the money she'd funded for Catherine's schemes. Ryan, Catherine's lover, had simply disappeared from the picture the moment the legal trouble started. Turned out his commitment to Catherine was about as solid as her commitment to our marriage had been. On a Saturday morning in late spring, I was teaching Lucas how to repair the espresso machine at the Morrison Street location when Madison walked in with college brochures. "Dad," she said, spreading the materials across the table, "I've been thinking about what I want to study." "Yeah? What's caught your interest?" "Family law," Madison replied with a smile that reminded me exactly why I'd fought so hard. "I want to help kids like Lucas and me, kids whose parents put them in impossible situations." Lucas looked up from a machine he was learning to fix. "That's cool, Madison. You be good at that." "I learned from the best," she said, looking at me. "I learned from a dad who showed me that fighting for what's right is always worth it, even when it's hard." That evening, as we sat around the dinner table in our real home, Lucas asked a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, do you think Mom will ever get better?" I thought carefully before answering. "I hope so, buddy. But that's up to her. Our job is to build the best life we can and to always tell each other the truth. Even when the truth is hard." Madison asked, "Especially when the truth is hard?" I replied, "Because that's when it matters most." As I tucked Lucas into bed that night, he said something that made everything I'd been through worthwhile. "Dad," He said, "I'm glad you're my father." "Me too, buddy," I replied. "Me too." The house was quiet that night, but it was a good quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from peace instead of secrets, from love instead of fear, from a family that had been tested and emerged stronger. Catherine had tried to write our story as a tragedy. Instead, we turned it into a story about resilience, truth, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his children. Some battles are worth fighting. Some wars are worth winning. And some families are worth saving, no matter what it costs.